God has placed in all of us this incredible desire for adventure and to take risks. I mean, we are fascinated by people that climb Mount Everest or people who get in submarines and go underneath the sea. I mean, we're just absolutely fascinated by those kind of stories because God has placed within us this need to take risks. But He wants us to do something even more than try to scale mountains and go into outer space and sail around the world. He has an adventure for us that's completely different. God has always planned for His people to take risks for Him. There's a passage of scripture in Hebrews, and it says, "By an act of faith, Abraham said yes to God's call to travel to an unknown place that would become his home." Can you imagine? I mean, God says to Abraham, "I want you to move. I'm not going to tell you where you're going. Just pack up your stuff and go." You talk about an adventure? That's stuff that kind of scares the daylights out of me. In fact, speaking of being scared, I am the biggest chicken on the planet. You just have no idea how ironic it is for me to be encouraging you to take a risk, to try something dangerous, to do something that you've never done, to do this adventure. I mean, that is so outside of who I am. I grew up in the most safety-conscious home that God has ever made. But saying yes to God takes you places you never thought you would go. That's been true for me. Because 6 years ago, God invited me on the most amazing adventure I had ever been on before. He invited me to become an advocate for people with HIV. And it happened in the most unexpected way. I mean, I just sat down in my living room, I picked up a news magazine article that had a story about AIDS in Africa. I didn't care about AIDS in Africa. It didn't matter to me. I didn't know anybody who was HIV positive. It had absolutely nothing to do with my life. But as I read that article that day, it captured me, it intrigued me. I saw for the first time that there were 40,000 people, they were saying at that time, infected with HIV. And I sat there thinking, I don't know anybody who's HIV positive. How could there be that many people and I not know them? And it was so shocking to me, I just threw the magazine down on the floor. I just didn't even know what to do with that reality. It started me on this journey of exploring with God, what does my faith have to do with a problem that affects so many people, and yet it doesn't feel like it touches me at all? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with my faith? So after about a month of really, really intense conversation with God, came to that proverbial why in the road, and where you have to say, okay, I'm going to pretend like either I don't know this, I'm going to stuff the cotton back in my ears, I'm going to just say, God, my safe life is what I'm going to stay with, or I could say yes to God and see where it led. I said yes. And the minute I did, God completely broke and shattered my heart and started this adventure that I haven't recovered from. There isn't much of the physical world really left to conquer. I mean, the mountains have been climbed, the seas, depths have been plumbed, we've been to outer space, we've been to the moon. There's just not a lot of the world, of that physical world left to conquer. But there is a world that is looking for conquerors, for leaders, for adventurers, for heroes. And it's the world of suffering. And it's all around us, and it's part of saying yes to God.